Waterlily today. So get your brushes ready and we're going to get started here. Just got to get my page up here. There we go. Okay, one more thing. When I hit the live button, it all changes around, so I have to move it back. All right, so hope everybody had a lovely Easter. It was reasonably busy around here, but we had a very nice one. So let's take a look at our reference. The reference, by the way, is listed underneath the description for this video, so you'll be able to see that there. Okay, so let's get the microphone out of the way a little bit here. I'm going to be working on Arches 140-pound cold press paper. I had a piece already stretched, so that's what I'm going to be working on. Just going to move it over a little bit here. There we go. So I don't have this drawn or anything. I'm just going to start off by sketching this out as quickly as I can. Hey, Michelle. Yeah, so it's so nice to see so many of my familiar faces here. It's always great to see you back. So this little water lily picture that I took, this was at a cottage I was at last summer, and they had this lovely little pond. And I really liked this little reflection on the water surface as well. The hint of, little stones and things underneath the water. Now this printout is just on regular copy paper. It didn't print out quite as nice as, say, this. It would have been a lot better if I'd printed it on, say, photo paper or something like that. But I just wanted to really get the placement of things so that I could draw this out. All right, so I'm going to figure out where I need where my water lily is going to fit. This is something I really want to talk to you about with the drawing process too, because when you're drawing something out, very often, and this is something I was also guilty of when I was learning to draw, that I ended up putting it off to the side too much, or too much in the middle, and then I didn't have enough room for the rest of the stuff. So I'd start drawing and I would draw the whole water lily. So if you are drawing out your watercolor, I really recommend that what you do is block in the space before you put in any detail. So I'm going to say that my water lily is going to fit in here somewhere. Okay, and I know I'm drawing this really lightly. It's a white subject. I really don't want to draw it too dark, but for the benefit of the camera, I will do it a little darker. This is what I call my working lines. So I'm roughing in the space for my water lily. I hope you can see some of those lines. Then there's the reflection, and I can instantly see by this, I have drawn the water lily too large. So isn't it good that I didn't already jump right in and start putting petals on and the reflection and everything else? Because if I do a reflection to fit this size of a water lily, I'm going to be really close to the bottom here. And look how much space I've got below the water lily. So I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and just pull that up and make my correction of my placement before any of the details. I find that I'm coming across this quite often when I'm teaching in person, and I've got students that are drawing out their image and everything, but they start finishing the water lily before even considering the placement of the other lily pads and things. And I remember one of my very first paintings that I did when I was young, and I was so proud of it, and I completely shoved it all off to one side in my canvas. So the reflection's going to fit in that space. Kind of looks like a mushroom at the moment. Okay, so that is where I'm going to put the water lily, maybe, if I don't guess everything else wrong. And I'm looking at the lily pads. Now, the water surface is very flat. I'm looking at an angle. If I'm looking straight down on it, it's going to be round. It's going to be round like a dinner plate. But if I'm looking at an angle, it starts to squish, right? It starts to squeeze because of the angle that I'm looking at. And of course, if I jumped in the water and looked at the lily pad from the side, it's going to be very, very thin. So, it obviously has to change proportion as you draw it. Beginners sometimes, I've talked about proportion a lot, perspective, things like that. I've talked about that a lot recently in some of my classes. And I think it's almost a universal thing that perspective's tricky. It can be a real conundrum in some cases, especially if you get something that isn't a basic shape. It might have an oddball shape or something like that, and then the perspective really starts to get wonky. Case in point, we were trying to draw a canoe the other day, and the canoe can be really easy to throw off your perspective because of the oddball shape. Now this water lily pad is a real weird shape, this one. Okay. So I'm looking at this curve. How gentle is that curve? It goes off the page, actually. And I should backtrack here for a second, because one of the things I didn't mention is that my paper could easily be a little bit longer than my printed image. Okay, that's something important to keep in mind. If you are suddenly changing the proportions of something, not just bigger, but you're making it longer or making it shorter, that can really throw things off. So you're going to either have to crop something off of here, or you're going to have to crop something off of the background in order to make those drawings turn out right. You can also, invent and add something to something that needs to be longer, that sort of thing. But just always be thinking, is the length and width the same sort of proportion as the finished result? So my go-to way of figuring it out is to line my photo. Okay, I'm looking at this part of my photo right here. Line that up in the corner. All right, so if I line that in the corner and I take a straight arrow and I run right up, I'm actually okay, because you see that I ended right in the corner. Sometimes, if this were a little bit more square, perhaps my angle might be like this, and then it's like, oops, missed it. I would have to either reduce the length of this or something like that. So it's this diagonal line. Anything on that diagonal line is going to be the right proportion. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have a question for me today, by the way, make sure you put it in capitals. I glance up at the screen. Sometimes the chat goes by faster than I can read it or whatever, or it may have passed me by. So, make sure you put it in capitals. So, while I'm drawing this out, I also wanted to make another request. I am thinking of having a demonstration in a couple of weeks. Depends on how many entries I get. But what I wanted to do was to have a critique. I wanted to offer to let you send me some of your photos, and I will critique them. So I can maybe offer some tips or suggestions, things that you might want to add, or change in any way in your painting. And, if that's something that interests you, by all means, do send your images to info@shelleypryor.com. And when I have enough for a live stream, I'm going to do that. One of my very favorite, or my students' favorite parts of classes is when I do critiques. It often will help them to understand what to do in their own paintings. So if that's something that you like, please do consider sending me one of your paintings. Just don't send me a ton of stuff. Just one painting. Please send the reference image at the same time because it's not helpful for me to not have the reference image. But I can critique a finished painting without it, but it's, for the purpose of this critique, I'd like to have the reference image as well. So I'd like that. And let me see, what else do I need? Oh, yes, I do need to have an explanation from you about what it is that you are wanting to improve. All right. So where you feel the spot that bothers you the most is happening. I don't want to go pointing out a whole bunch of things in your painting that you thought were great. So if there's something about your painting that you're unhappy with, please do let me know so that I critique it according to what it is that's bothering you. Okay, I think I've got that too small. That's the trouble. So I am correcting some of these things. These do not have to be, precise to the photo, of course. It is art after all. So I can get away with being pretty darn close, and if I don't share the photo with somebody and tell them to compare it, I will be perfectly fine. Just basic shapes. I'm not getting too involved. All right, so I think I am pretty close now. I'm going to lighten up a few of these lines. Now I know where I need to put my waterlily. I have my my lily pads here. I will draw them a little darker for you so that you can see them better. Normally I do my drawing quite light, but for the camera I need to do it darker. And hopefully you can see that now. I don't want to jinx it, but I think spring might actually be on the way. It might actually have arrived. I have a forsythia right outside my kitchen window, and it is blooming to beat the band. It's just looking wonderful. So nice to see. All right, now my water lily. Let's get going. I'm going to find the petal shapes. I'm just going to do them lightly to start with. Then I will sort of darken them up and lock them in. It's a lot harder to correct if you do them dark right off the bat. So I go light at first and then I commit. especially on this white flower. One thing I really don't want to have is a lot of dark lines. They will really show up. Do I mean all levels beginner too? Of course. Yes, and the critique will be on live on YouTube. I will do it just as if you were students in my in-person class, and hopefully give you some helpful hints. I'd like to also do another live stream that will be my best go-to tips. I almost did that one today, but I came across this Waterlily picture and I thought, no, I'm going to do this Waterlily. There's like so many tips that I picked up the hard way. The hard way meaning by trial and error. And I'd like to maybe take a live stream and just sort of go through and share some of my best things I've learned in watercolor. It's not the easiest medium, is it? Okay, so we've got the little center there, something like that. And now, as I do the reflection, I do need to consider the actual water lily and that it will, the petals have to make sense. This is one petal here that looks like it might be reflection, but it's actually a petal that's laying down, actually sort of sitting on the surface, or maybe even slightly submerged. But there's this one petal right here coming forward. Sorry about my neighbor's dogs barking. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but they are barking their heads off. And the angles of these petals in the reflection are darker. They're also, the angles, a little bit different as well. And that is the, that's one of the nature, that's part of the nature of the reflections. We're actually looking at the reflection at a different angle than the water lily itself, because it's a little bit lower to our eye level. So it does change things a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to shorten up this petal a little bit. I know it's a long petal, it's just that it's coming towards me. So, my arm has a length here, but if I do it this way, it gets much shorter. So the foreshortening of this petal there. And so I've got a pretty good drawing, but it does need some more refinement. So I'm going to spend a few minutes just sort of polishing up this drawing here. And then I want to erase any of my working lines, the first kick at the can that might not have been the right line or whatever. Kneaded eraser are the kneaded erasers. This is the putty type of eraser. These are actually really good because they you don't necessarily have to use abrasion to get and rough up your paper in order to get something off. You can, if you wanted to lighten up your drawing, for example, you just lay it down and roll it. So there's none of this aggressive back and forth. Sandra's asking if she would like to know where I bought my round palette. I've bad news, Sandra. I'm sorry, but this one is discontinued. They don't make it anymore. This is a Speedball color wheel palette. But the good news is that there's a very similar type, a Quiller, Stephen Quiller palette, it's called. You can try and find that. I'm not sure in the Netherlands whether or not it's available there, but that is that's the situation. It is not available anymore. It is probably one of my number one questions that I get from my YouTube video, my round palette. I almost need to write to Speedball and say, please make it again. But not sure if they would comply. They, of course, would have to have a market for it. Maybe I'll need to write to them and say, we need that palette. So I hope you don't mind me spending the time here drawing this out. I just need to get something that I'm going to be happy with. One of the things I might even do as I'm drawing this is to think about the shading, where the shadows are going to be. Sometimes when you have a complex subject, and the waterlilies, like, it does have a lot of petals, but sometimes a flower can get like so complex. And you'd know this if you ever painted something like a peony. Peonies have a million little frilly, swirling little petals, and the complexity can really get to you. So sometimes what I will do is I will even just pencil in a little slight shadow. Now, most of that's going to dissolve in the paint that I put down. And obviously it's going to be in a darker area. I wouldn't be putting shadows in a lighter area, but it can serve as a reminder to me, to myself, where I need to place these shadows. And it also tells me which of the petals is the one in front, right? The one underneath is always the one that receives the shadow. The one on top, usually not so much. Hopefully that's paint, not blood. I think it's paint. I was cleaning my palette before. Okay, so let's see if I can step this up a little bit faster. These petals are not pointed. They're almost pointed. They have a very, very slight roundness to the tip. They're nearly pointed. They're very, very close. But I'm noticing that they are not a dead point like a needle. So, okay, so this is the petal behind it. It's going to get the shadow. And I'm barely putting any pencil down here. If I'm saying to put pencil down, it's very, very light. Some of you might even want to do this with watercolor pencil, which will dissolve in water, right? So as soon as you start painting the paint on there, the pencil lines start to dissolve. So that can be helpful. All right, so we're going to go put in a few of these little curly Q. I guess there's stamen. They're a little hard to see when they're yellow. And whenever you have white or yellow on your paper, that's where you really need your pencil lines lighter. It's certainly lighter than I'm doing right here. But I need you to see it on camera. Otherwise, you're going to say, zoom in, I can't see. So, Okay, so I'm going to clean up some of the lines, those original working lines that I'm no longer using. I'm going to get rid of those because they are not serving anything and could end up showing in the end. So I'm going to try to lift some of that. Hopefully my volume's better today. I was playing around with my microphone. I know some of you said that was a little hard to hear before, so hopefully you can hear me. I'm not speaking loud either, but I can speak louder if you need me to. All right, I think I'm about there. Oh, this guy needs to be just a little bit longer. And I'm seeing one thing here. Just gonna move something here. That cuts through, and this one doesn't touch. So little adjustments, and the drawing is a little bit annoying, to be honest. But it is such a crucial part of whether or not your painting actually turns out. If you have the shapes wrong and you paint them, well, you can't come back from that. You're done. Especially when you start getting some of your dark colors in there and that sort of thing. All right. Drawing's still a little sketchy looking. It's a little crude, I guess. Not as refined as I would normally take the time to do, but let's get on with the show here. Just want to bring this down a little bit more. And this comes down here. Okay. I think I'm going to live with this part of the drawing now. Just making sure it's dark enough. I'm never really concerned too much about the dark pencil lines being where it's next to something dark, because they can always be covered up. We did, I hope it's good today. I did a whole lot of stuff. Hopefully it's working. Let's hope it is. Well, I'm glad. We did have the conversation. Basically they just sort of offered some ideas, most of which I'd already tried, but so far, maybe they did something at their end. I don't know. And for those of you that maybe missed last week, sometimes I keep having these streaming issues, and today it's good, which is good. I'm glad to hear that. Glad that it's not given us any issues today. Okay, just cleaning up lines, especially on this Waterlily, because the Waterlily, those pencil lines, as soon as you get them wet, they are gonna show, and they're quite permanent at that point, because they end up sort of melting into the paper. Okay, so there's a fair bit of shadow right under here. And I'm just doing a little shading with pencil. keep in mind that pencil can eventually sort of melt into your paint as well. So you have to be careful that you are not leaving a lot of loose graphite on your paper. So once I get the drawing locked in here, I'm going to lift any of the loose graphite that could easily get into my paint. You can see the drawing, and then I will kind of lighten it up. Actually, that has to come in more. Okay, so this is the reflection right here. This is actually going to be pretty dark through here. And I'm going to take my kneadable eraser and I'm going to roll this over my drawing. It will get lighter. You won't see it as well after I do this, but it will be lighter. It's picking up any of the loose graphite that is going to be problematic for my paint. So I'm making sure I lighten things up. This is why it's so important if you're transferring, say, from a photo or something and you're using graphite paper to transfer. If you draw it large on something else and you want to transfer it to your paper, make sure that these lines are clean, but not dark. You can have clean lines that are still light. But this is, those first working lines that I did are, like I deliberately did them kind of pale because I was kind of easing my way into it and feeling the placement of things and that sort of thing. Okay, so I've rolled over everything and you can see how much lighter it is. So a lot of that has been picked up by this. Do I ever, you know what, I don't use watercolor pencil. I have used it, but in my paintings, I don't use watercolor pencil. I am just simply a wet paint and brush kind of girl. I don't mind using watercolor pencil in my sketchbook, but in my paintings, I don't really do that. So, you know, we have fairly large shapes here. I want to try to eliminate the unnecessary whites at this stage. And if I'm looking at my reference picture here, I'm going to put in mid values first. So I don't want to jump right into dark just yet, but I see, you know, of course, these green lily pads. I highly recommend you mix your greens because your mixed greens are going to have a lot more variety and interest. The colors might even separate a little bit on the paper, which is actually gorgeous in watercolor. If you buy a tube, it's so well mixed that you get a flat color like what you buy to paint your walls with. So if you want to have more interest in your painting, mix your own colors. It looks better. That's all I can say. It looks better. Let's see. Oh, you didn't hear my neighbor's dogs. Well, that's good because they have not stopped. Okay. Margot says, sorry, I arrived a wee bit late at the beginning. I didn't hear the reason for using an oblique line to do something specific. Could you please tell me what that was? Okay, so just placing a general shape in. So I know that the the placement of this water lily is going to fit in this odd shape that I put in here. This water lily is going to fit in this shape, and so on. By the time I put in all those sort of basic shapes, then I will know whether or not I've got it placed in the right area on my page. You can use a grid system. You can use, like, there's a lot of different systems that you can use for creating an accurate drawing. There are multiple different ways. I don't think any of them are cheating. But if you're actually just drawing by visually looking at something, I think that just putting the rough stuff in is so much easier. Do I ever use watercolor pen? Okay, June's asking, how do you know when your rubber is full of pencil and you need a new one? I hear, oh, good. Okay, so my kneadable eraser is, it's kind of, it feels sticky. It isn't, like, it can hold a ton of graphite. The thing is that this is sticky enough, and you can actually see, maybe you can see the graphite in here. It is sticky enough, like when I touch it, like my fingers kind of stick to it. This is stickier than the paper is. So it's always going to stay in here. It's not going to come off onto something else. The big secret to using these is to warm it up with the palm of your hand. So they call it kneadable because that's when it works best, is when you soften it up with the warmth in your hands. Likewise, the oils in your hands, and this might surprise you, but the oils in your hands actually keep the kneaded eraser softer. And eventually these can dry out. You'll notice that I keep it in a little tiny jar. That's to keep it airtight so it doesn't dry out. That'll be the bigger problem, is the drying out of these kneadable erasers. Bigger problem than having too much graphite inside of the eraser. It's not going to come back off onto your paper. But you just knead it right in, and the whole thing will get a little darker. Might start to get a little darker in color, kind of thing, but it will work just fine. As long as it's soft and sort of that has that stickiness to it, it'll be working just fine. Now this one I had a long time, actually. I keep it in this. I have even gone so far as to put coconut oil on my hands and then work this. And the coconut oil eventually kind of gets into the eraser and keeps it soft. So I actually rescued a couple of erasers and got this soft again. And no, the oils from the coconut oil have not affected my watercolor at all. I mean, I'm not mixing a punch in there. It's just, what's on my hands gets in here, so it doesn't get really oily. All right, so I'm going to mix my greens. I'm going to bring this over to the main stage here, and I'm going to be using, what is this? This is a brush with no numbers or anything on it anymore, but this is a squirrel hair brush. I think it's a 1 or a 2. I'm not sure. You can't always go by numbers. You can see my finger next to it, so you can see the size based on the size of my finger. So I need like a pale green, right? This is kind of a pale green. I'm going to mix this with my cool yellow, my aureolin, and I could pick any of these blues, but I'm going to try this with my cerulean. When looking at this, it seems like a green that's closer to cerulean, and that looks way too bright, right? We need something a little duller than this, for sure. So let's try this out. I'm going to put more. This is cerulean blue I'm adding in. So it's very much a blue green. So it's way too bright, but I can temper that. I can tone it down. I can take the punch out of that color, the vibrancy out of that color. If I go, like, I use this color and this color. If I jump across, I can take something like a permanent rose, put a little off to the side there. Let's see what that mixed in is going to look like. It's taken some of the bite out of that bright, bright color. And you might be thinking, well, I don't know, that looks kind of blue to me. Add a little more yellow in if you need to. Okay, so let's test this out. It's not too far off. It's still a little too blue, so I'm put a little more yellow in. Basically used all the primaries here to create that, and that is closer. All right, this is one of the easy ways to test it. You know, you've got to print out. If this were photo paper, I wouldn't be able to do that. So I have this, and I can just test out my color right here on my palette. This one's obviously more yellow, so you know I have to add more yellow to my green. But that's how I get the various shades that I'm looking for. Is just to have my color mixed, instead of just using something already mixed in a tube. I find the very few mixed watercolors like that you buy are a color that I would ever want to use in nature. So you almost always have to add something to them to make them look natural. So why are you buying a pre-mixed tube? It's not convenient. All right, so within each of these lily pads, that's what they're called. Within each of these, I'm seeing like a yellowy spot. Then I see kind of a little bit of a blue highlight kind of thing. And I'm looking for subtle differences like that, because that's going to make an infinitely more interesting painting than just sort of taking the shorthand to cut the shorthand view of this and just, you know, painting it all the same. There's a lot of little holes in these leaves. I think there was hail the night before. We ended up with like little holes in everything, but you know, I don't have to put all of those in either. I think some of them are interesting. I think some of these little nicks and you know, bug holes are kind of an interesting thing. I'm going to include some of those, but I don't need to worry about that right now because those are darker. Those can go on top. All right, so with my palette, and by the way, you notice that I've got more blue over here, more yellow over here. It's so that I have the option of choosing which one I'd like to use. And so I can just switch back and forth. I'm always going to have a paper towel available to take some of the extra moisture out of my brush. If I'm not working really large, I might want to do that. These shapes are pretty large, though, in my case, because I'm working a quarter sheet. So I'm pretty much just going to fill my brush up with wet color. So I'm going to start off kind of yellowy. Right here, I'm filling it up because if I fill this brush, what I can do is I can pick up more paint and connect it and really get a nice transition between these colors. I can keep the flow of the paint going without the panic of trying to work so fast that I don't get brush marks kind of thing. You know, I don't have to rush. As long as this color stays wet, these will flow together beautifully. I am working on dry paper, by the way, and there are some areas that are showing some sky. So I want to go like extra light, lots of water in some of these sections of this Waterlily pad, lily pad, I guess. back to more yellow here. More yellow. This one's pretty yellow. This whole lily pad is pretty yellow. Ugh. That was a bit of undissolved paint I picked up there right off the bat. How do you like that? That's going to be a blemish in that lily pad. One of the things I found that is hard to learn, but I did, is that when stuff happens, you adapt. Stop trying to fix stuff. You adapt what you're going to do with your painting. That's easy to say when you're doing something organic like this, but it's not so easy if you're doing a architecture or something like that. But yeah, this will like learning to adapt or learning to at least react to it right away. So for example, I smooshed that out as much as I could, but that's still nice and wet. Like you can actually see if I tip this, you can see how shiny it is. It is, you know, the paint would actually move around if I were to tip this up and move it around. All right, I don't want to do this one because the two will bleed together, but I'm going to do another lily pad right here. And I don't know why I'm starting on the right-hand side. I'm right-handed, and that just means that to reach over to the left, I'm going to be putting my hand in wet paint. So whenever possible, even if it's only subtle, I want to try to make one side of the lily pad or one part of the lily pad darker or cooler or something. I'm really trying as much as possible to avoid the whole trap of making it look smooth. I am making it look smooth, but what I'm also doing is putting some variety within that smoothness. So it's going from a darker to a lighter, or a cooler to a warmer, that sort of thing. So I'm going to put a little bit of that yellowy green right here at the bottom. Doesn't matter if it's not in the picture, it's interesting. It's interesting in a painting. So as much as I do work from photos and people say, oh, your painting looks like a photo, these are little things that I do in my paintings that help to keep it look a little bit more alive, a little bit more vibrant. Okay, so here's what I can do. I can turn this around. Likewise, I need to turn my reference around. And I'm going to work elsewhere. So I'm going to work on this one here, and I do see some variety in here as well. Does it feel like I'm painting these darker than the photo? It might. It might feel that way, and that sensation, and that's something you kind of have to work at. I'm still working at it, to be honest, is when I see this, it feels dark, but it's an optical illusion because this is actually about correct. First of all, it has to be a little darker because I know it's going to dry lighter. But secondly, it feels dark because it's against white. If it were against a real dark water, like we're going to be putting in, well, yeah, that would probably not look too dark. So there's all these little variables that you get in watercolor that you might not expect, especially if you're somebody who's worked in, say, acrylic a lot. Okay, I'm going to get a little more paint here. These are kind of bigger lily pads. I'm not really that worried about, gosh, I didn't mix a puddle big enough. I get this a lot. Now, if you're trying to do one smooth big wash or something, that's important. But if you are trying to do a variety of different leaves, like we're doing right here, or lily pads, a little variation is actually kind of interesting. I'm not using any new colors, so it's not going to dramatically change things. But let's let motor in here. We've got a certain amount of time to work in here, so I'm using this brush. This brush holds a lot. It's one of the reasons I do like the squirrel hair brushes, is that, boy, they hold tons of paint. I actually find that quite helpful. And the synthetic ones are pretty good too. They're getting better, put it that way. They're getting better. They haven't quite mastered the idea of getting them as absorbent as natural hair brushes, but I do like the way I can load this up, and just the paint flows so nicely. But I'm really filling up the brush. That's the point I'm trying to get across here. I'm filling it up because this helps with the paint flow. The avoidance of brush marks and things like that. And those little wormholes and whatnot in the leaves, I'm just ignoring them for now. They're going to be darker. I don't have to worry about that. All right, so let's move along here. I'm going to do this one. I could have connected all of these. That would have probably been okay. But I'm thinking about the individual differences between the lily pads as I go along, so I don't mind taking this approach. Yellowy green through there. And it's kind of, there's a band through here that's a bit lighter, so I just rinsed off my brush and I'm painting some more water in there just to help those colors flow a bit more. And when I talk about wet color, I'm being quite serious about it, because the thing when you work on dry paper, you don't realize you have to change how wet your brush is compared to when you're working on wet paper. And I will often tell my students that, you know, if you're working on wet, your brush should be drier if you're looking for control. If you are working on dry, your brush needs to be wetter, like lots wetter, because this is cotton paper, and oh boy, is it thirsty. It starts drinking in all your color right off the bat. Like, I mean, look at the puddle I've mixed. I've mixed quite a large puddle, and it's like, poof, gone already. It's like, where'd it go? I'm just putting a little variation in here because it's interesting. All right, so I'm going to dry this because the lily pads in between I can't do until that's dry, or they'll just I'll make, it's not that I couldn't connect them, I could, but doing so would most likely result in blossoms happening for sure on this one, right? Because this one's not fully dry. It's got maybe a little bit of shine on it. This one's very shiny because I just did it. And so if I go in here with something wetter, it's just going to make a blossom into here. So I have to dry this. Let me wipe off the tape first. These little beads of wet paint here, I don't want those rolling around. They take longer to dry on the tape than they do on the paper, so those can roll around or somehow get back onto your paper and cause problems. I've done that where I've not wiped off my tape, and then I've got these weird little blossoms at the edge. It's like, where'd those come from? Yes, I do not have this palette anymore, Katerina. It is very similar to the Quiller palette though. Quiller palette comes both plastic or ceramic. Not going to tell you where the source is because I'm not sure, but I have seen them in the local art stores, and they're very similar. They have kind of a squared off corner, but the main layout of the paint in a color wheel is quite similar to this. Have a great day, David. Okay. When the paper's still kind of rippled, I know it's still wet. So I'm trying to get the paper to lay down flat again. And I know that when I stop drying this, it should be, when it gets back to room temperature, it shouldn't have a dampness to it. There we go. I think that's dry enough. Okay, so I'm going to carry on in the similar way. If I turn my reference, or if I turn my paper upside down, I have to turn my reference upside down. So it's right side up again, and I can do this. And I'm going to start over here this time because I'm smarter this time around than the first. All right, so I'm going to come in and once again, I'm going to be looking for variations. They might be subtle, right? It might be just a little bit more yellow in one spot. It might be a little lighter. It might be a little bit more blue. It's just those little things that can elevate your painting to a higher level. Just looking for those variations. So I'm going to rinse I just went into my water bucket here, extending this down so I've got a lighter area within the middle of this, and then back to my greenish, bluish green down here. Try to work carefully around behind the other water lily. I'm not so concerned about the surrounding water, but I do need to keep in mind the water lily pad next to it. I don't want to overlap that. That would look kind of odd. Okay, so now I may end up re-wetting some of these and adding a few things in, but think of it this way. What I'm doing at this stage is generally getting rid of that white paper, which can throw us off in terms of achieving the correct value or the strength of value, and sometimes even the coloring. But overall, this is just a getting rid of the white paper exercise. It also helps me to sort of see where the painting is headed, that I can see, I can visualize a little bit more. Margot's asking, as soon as we notice a dark edge, should we fix it right away or wait until it dries first? Well, if you mean a dark edge like this one, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till that dries. If I start, I'm as much as possible, I'm trying to keep the moisture consistency common throughout the whole thing. If I suddenly start taking a paper towel to it, or blotting or lifting, all of that sort of thing, I could actually begin to make things look a little blotchy. So I find it's almost easier to wait until later. The other thing is that, you know, if you're not a perfectionist, raise your hand if you're not a perfectionist. But if you're not a perfectionist, leave it. It's nature. It's imperfect. It's not a big, it shouldn't be a big production. You may not even notice that by the time you put the dark water around it either. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't fix it. I'm just saying that I would wait if you're planning to fix it. Oh, you guys are helping each other out with the palette. Thank you so much. Yeah, the ceramic palettes, they're great if they stay in your studio, but they are heavy to carry around. So you might want to try and find the plastic version with a lid for going from class to class and that sort of thing. Now I have this one, which will run into that one. So I may have to dry this once again in order to sort of carry on. Just putting a little bit of yellow in here just for a little bit of variety. And I'm putting a couple of strokes in. That hints at that veining, that real subtle veining that you see sometimes in the lily pad, and sometimes just the ripples of the lily pad. You know, you see them kind of ruffle. Take my dryer and get this dry. There's more water drops on my tape, so I'm going to take that off and then I'll dry it. Now, there's a couple of advantages to working on dry paper compared to working on wet paper. So I could have wet each of these first and then put the color in to keep the color soft and everything. But by working with the actual color, first I see it more clearly. I know it's not going to dry as light if I'm working on paper directly. This is really important for when you want to put something in that's really strong in color or darker in color. Working on dry is a lot easier to achieve a darkness or a rich color compared to wetting the paper or wetting the area first. Amazon has a different brand, Jack Richardson Quiller palette. I think, are they different? I'm not sure if they are different, but you could be right. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for doing the research as I'm drawing this and sharing with the other artists. It's really that edge that I need to make sure is nice and dry before I carry on. Now, as I said, there's some of these I might end up adding a little bit of color to. This printout is a little bit more dull than this version here, so I may want to add things, but I think adding things will allow me to include some veining, some things like that. So, or, you know, ruffles and whatnot. Now, this one's going to be the trickiest of all because I have to start working around the actual water lily. So I'm going to have a small brush. Here, I'm just going to use a small synthetic brush, something that has a point. I don't know, this one's not that great shape anymore, but this one has a point that I can come down into those little V shapes between the petals. Could I mask off the water lily? Sure, I could do that, and that would make applying this wash even simpler. Now, one thing I'm just catching myself doing, and I have to be careful of this, I'm putting down paint and then I'm spreading it out. That can wreck a wash. I don't know if you knew that, but it can wreck a wash because you spread the paint out, it soaks in like right away. So if I keep it nice and wet on the surface, I can paint for a really long time. That'll buy me lots of time. It'll also keep my wash from being overly diluted. So like I can drop plenty of color in there, as you can see. So I'm going to make this a little more bluish over here. And I don't know how much the subtleties are showing up on the screen, but hopefully you can see the yellows versus the blue-greens on the screen. I really like that, actually. Where this is really going to be important, this using really wet color, is when I need to work around the lily itself, the water lily, because that whole slowing down to tuck in between all of the petals, that can be terrifying, right? I don't know if you've ever been there. I'm sure you have, but you know, you're trying to get it in there before it dries. So my answer to that is load her up. See, I just put lots of color right there. All right, so I've got lots of color. I'm going to bring it in as close as I can with with this big brush. And then I'm just going to tidy it up with the smaller brush that I chose. You can see that's like very, very wet color there. Okay, you can tell it's really wet. It kind of looks dark because it is so wet right now. But I'm just going to take this smaller, and it's a blotted brush because I don't need to add any paint to it. I just need to pull this down. Let's just clean this up now. So by having tons of paint on there, it not only lets me sort of pull the color down and give me lots of time to work, but it keeps things from drying. That wasn't what I was going to say, but I forgot what I was going to say. No coffee yet today, so that's my excuse. I'm sticking to it. So I'm just borrowing from the surrounding area, and I know you probably got your eye on that puddle sitting right there, and so do I. But that's an easy problem to solve. It's the when the paint dries that's not an easy problem to solve. So that's why we need to really load up the color. Stop spreading it out so much. When I figured that out, it was like light bulb moment for me. It was a real aha moment. So I'm going to take the same small brush and I'm going to blot it, right? There's nothing on it. And I'm touching it. I'm not wiping up the paint. I'm not doing anything. I'm just drinking. And that is resolved. Okay, so I've got a nice clean line around my water lily. I didn't need to use masking. I'm noticing a little gap right here. I don't know if I can get that in there without making issues, but I barely had anything in my brush. And I think I'm okay. I think I survived that one. Now, as Margot pointed out, there is this dark line. That's something I can deal with later. I don't need to worry about that now. I can take that out later. And that solution is easier than you think. So this one is dry and it has a little bit of a dark line. Now part of the dark line might also because I did my pencil lines pretty dark. So I'm not sure how effective this is going to be, but here, for example, if I just take this really well blotted brush, make sure it's clean, blot it well, and I'm going to use just the very tip of the brush and just hit the excess paint, like just the dark spots. I don't want to take and lay down the whole brush. I just want to take the tip of the brush, like a needle, like a little bit of a surgical approach to this, and see if I can lighten this up. Now this is getting pretty nitpicky. I don't know that I want to get too far into this, but we could really go down a rabbit hole trying to fix stuff, and I catch my students pulling me down that rabbit hole quite often, actually, in my classes. And it's like, oh, how can I fix this? And it's like, oh, well, it'd be better if you didn't. And then their shoulders droop and they look very sad. But, you know, I have found that if you try to fix stuff all the time, it looks worse. Yeah, there's things you can do if, you know, if it's an emergency, but people are fixing stuff that's not an emergency. Like if I dropped a big blob of Payne's Gray in the middle there or something, what could I do? I mean, Payne's Gray is such a staining color and it's so dark. Well, I would turn that into a bigger wormhole. That's what I would do, instead of trying to actually take it out. So half of watercolor, I heard an expression once, you don't control watercolor, you commiserate with it. So I guess that's what it boils down to. I'm going to take my dryer to this because we need to keep moving along here. Yeah, so you learn to work with it. I don't know why that would be unless you have not subscribed and hit the bell. Because I'm not sure if you have to be both, if you have to be subscribed and hit the bell. Subscribing means you'll see more of my content. The bell, I think, ensures that you will see it because it will tell you when I'm live. I don't know if you have both of those checked. I'm not sure why that happens. All right, so when I was talking about really layering up a lot of paint and everything, I want to explain to you one thing. I am working on a high quality paper. This is Arches 140 pound cold press paper, and it is 100% cotton. If you are not working on 100% cotton paper, and you'll know that by your paper says acid-free instead of 100% cotton. Cotton is 100% acid-free. So, but if they make paper that's not cotton, it could be made of wood pulp or other materials, and they treat it chemically to make it acid-free. So it's just not going to be as absorbent. And you will notice a big difference when you are doing things like washes. So I want to work light to dark here because of, well, that's the way you normally work in watercolor. But if I have a white color flower and I have dark paint right above it or something, I don't want to hit the edge of that and have that sort of running, streaming into my white watercolor. So I'm going to develop my watercolor a little bit, or water lily. Too many water words. My water lily a little bit. So I'm going to go with a nice, I'm going to start with this Areolin. It's a nice transparent lemony type of yellow. It looks more like a lemon than it does an egg yolk kind of thing. So, but it is a transparent, or at least semi-transparent, but it's very staining as well. I'm going to come in and start the center of the flower with the stamen. And it obviously does not need to be precise to the photo. You can get the general idea. But let me suggest that as you're doing this, that you don't, it's like trees. You don't make them all the same height, the same straight as an arrow kind of thing. Like, put a little variety in there so that it looks natural. Now I'm going to go with gamboge, which is more of an egg yolk kind of yellow. And I'm giving you the description because not everybody has these colors. You might have to substitute. And you can see that that is giving me a new color in here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so you can see what I'm doing up a little closer. And as I come in here, I'm being really careful about the shape of this petal here. So as I come down, I'm going to come right all the way to the line, but I need to maintain that line. Very important. You can still see some of my dark pencil lines. Normally I would have lightened up and you know, made that a little bit more precise and all that, but yeah, time doesn't allow that for live streaming, so I'm not going to do that. And then I can rinse and blot that brush and just sort of smudge some of those edges if I want to, just so it doesn't look a little bit too paint by number. I want to have a little bit of a transition in some of these from the cooler, lighter yellow to the golden yellow. It's definitely more orangey on my in person than it appears on the screen. Okay. I'm going to come down into there a little bit more, and now I want to start thinking about some of the shadows in the white petals. So some of these shadows in the white petals, I could mix like a blue or a blue-gray, and I could do them all the same, or I could make this a lot more interesting. So I'm going to take some of that cerulean blue and just have a puddle over here. I'm going to take a puddle of permanent rose and put that on my palette. And I already have some of the yellow. So I've got a blue and a yellow and a red. And I'm going to let these mix and mingle to create my shadows. Now, if you saw the video a couple of weeks ago where I had the eggs, you'll understand where I'm going with this. So I don't want to have boring gray shadows. So I can start putting in some very soft, so it has to be pretty watered down. I will work on dry, but I'm going to blend as I go. So I'm going to soften up my lines. Whenever you're softening a line, put enough paint down that you can actually soften the line. If you put it down dry, if what's in your brush is just a teeny bit of paint and it's not very wet, and you put it down, you're going to go over to your water bucket and it's already dried. By the time you come back, you don't have the chance even to soften the line. So here's my recommendation. Just fill up this little brush. And it's a little brush because I'm not working very large. But let's say here, for example, so I'm putting in this color, and hopefully you can see that that's wet color right there. I'm going to take a little whisper of pink and drop that in as well. Now I rinse my brush, and I'm going to give that a blot. And on the clean side, I'm going to kind of walk up to it. So I'm sort of wetting this area here, and then I'm just going to hit it right there. And yes, I could certainly wet the petal first and then put the color in, but I'm going to zoom out. The camera does not like being that close. But if I wet it first, my shadows are all going to turn out a little bit too pale. And you won't see the shape, because whenever you have water on the paper, you're diluting the color you're putting on. And yes, you can adapt to that and so on. I'll maybe do the next one just so you can see what I mean. And I'm going to wet this whole petal right in here, the one tucked in behind. And then I put some of my color down here, and it blends a lot by itself. You know, that's blending very nicely on its own. And this works equally well, but you have to kind of overcompensate for how light it's going to be. You may not also have as much control over how far that goes. But it's quite nice. It's blending nicely all by itself. And that is certainly an option as well. So we can do that. I am not going to add red to every one of these shadows. I want to have some variety in here. So, for example, this petal right here, I might just leave that one pretty blue. In fact, it's picking up maybe a bit of the yellow right here, which is close to the center. I don't know, my printout's not that clear, so it is a little tricky to see. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Sometimes we get a little too obsessed with making it like the photo. Okay, so that's definitely a different color. And it looks, as I do this, it looks out of place. It's when you start putting it, like you start getting all of them in there, and then it's like, oh, okay, I see how they are all fitting together now. But when you have something isolated and it's different from everything else, it's going to feel incorrect. I don't want to lose the white of the paper though. I really want to make sure that I am maintaining the white of the paper for some of these water lilies. They are pretty stark white. They're a little bit translucent too. Just a hint of red in there. Thank you for that reminder. Yes, if you came in late, I am looking ahead to doing a live stream where you send me your reference picture and the painting you've done, and I will put it on screen, and we will talk about, your strengths, where it could be improved. And you need to send it to me, as well as explaining to me what it is that you would like to improve or what you're not happy with. Sometimes you don't know what to improve. Sometimes you think you need to fix one thing and it turns out, oh, if I just change that other thing, this will look right. That kind of thing. So those are some of the things we're going to be looking at coming down the road. I'm also going to be I'm going to be doing a live stream on some of my top tricks and tips that I would offer to watercolorists. All right, one at a time. It's just, a slow and steady pace here. If it's a bigger petal, I might take the approach of wetting first. Either way works. If it's smaller, I tend to just put the color in first and then soften it out. And I'm just working from some primaries. Permanent Rose, Cerulean Blue, and Areolan Yellow. I do have to jump around because I can't work next to a petal that's already wet, or they flow together, which you know. I'm hunting, I'm looking, where can I go? But if you put this on dry paper, make sure you're putting actual wet color down so that it will blend. This one has a bit of yellow on the tip. Letting those colors mix and mingle on the paper is so pretty. I mean, it just looks so, it really develops the whole nature of watercolor. And this is what watercolor does best. It does all the blending without the effort. We think of watercolors being hard, and in our heads we're psyched up to think, oh, it's hard. But in some ways, watercolor is like super easy because you can let colors flow on the surface, and it's like, wow, I didn't have to brush those to blend them at all. It was a piece of cake. And that's one of the beautiful things I think about watercolor. Cleaning up those edges as I go, but love just the way it flows without effort. This one has a little more color because this is the one that's sort of laying down. But I can always go back and redo any of the petals if it needs more. I can probably do this one. Now, you may occasionally get a petal that is cupped, or curled over at the edges, and you want to give the illusion of that. So the thing is, don't wet the whole petal. You're only going to wet the portion. So in this case, it might be this part that gets, and I left the curled over part dry. A little pink in there too. Less concerned about things like, oh, is the color right? You know, because we're not using the gray that the photo kind of gives us. I'm using more color in here, which will look so much nicer in your painting. All right. Onward and upward. So just going to carry on here. I'm going to try and go a little bit faster because, well, I explained it. You don't need me to explain every single one and slow it down. So I'm just going to go a little bit faster here. I'm going to transition. This is all a very similar value. Transition to more of a pink there, and maybe just a little bit of yellow down here, just because I can, kind of thing. And just let those colors sit side by side on the paper and mingle, and it's so nice. Oh, condolences, Angela. Funerals aren't my fun time. Well, actually find remembrances are a nicer idea, less somber. All right, I'm coming in, I'm bringing in a little bit more color into this one. As these are drying, I'm seeing, oh, it's light, and I can get darker. That's easier than getting lighter, that's for sure. But if you think you're too dark with something, you can always go, you can always make something else look darker to comparatively make it feel correct. So a gray looks very dark against white, but it looks very light against black. There we go. I'm getting bolder. So I think I can work on this one. I'm not really sure where I've worked, so I'm just going to give it a quick dry. I try not to, like when I have something like this and I have just put it down, if I dry it right away, it stops that beautiful blending. So I'm going to dry this part here so I can work here without trying to dry this part, which I just did. I'd like that to sort of mellow a little bit, like you let it naturally, organically blend on the paper. I may have to pull the image up on the screen for myself because this is it's so small on the screen, on my screen anyway. It's so small, it's really hard to see. As I said, the reference picture is actually there's a link to it underneath this video, so you can take a look at that. But I'm just, oops, hit something there. Wrong thing. Gotta pull it up again. I just need a bigger version that I can look at because it's too small for me to look at, and my printout isn't very good. So I have multiple windows open on my screen, so it makes it a little bit tricky. There we go. Okay. Well, it looks pretty weird even close up. So it's a little bit blue around the outer edges. Hints of pink, and the color I'm putting down, it's wet color because I need it to flow. a touch of yellow in the middle. It's actually kind of a yellowy green, but it should mix with my blue, or I can mix my blue and my yellow together, and I get that effect. And this is just going to be water. Looks kind of rainbow, technicolor or whatever, but when it's all together, this will look fine. Why is day drinking so much worse? I don't know. I'm really not much of a drinker. I enjoy a glass once in a while, but can't be bothered with it, to be honest. So a little bit of pink in here. Rinse my brush. Dampen all around these so that they just sort of mix and mingle. I could dampen the petal first and drop those colors in. That would be fine. Oh, well, maybe I need to put on some snappy music or something. Wake you up. All right. Clean water in some parts. Tap, tap, just slightly with my paper towel if it ended up being too dark. This pretty watery color I'm putting on here. If you wet your petals first, you're not going to be adding in really watery color. It's just going to flow like crazy. So if your paper's wet, your brush is dry. If your paper's dry, your brush is wet. Let's get under here. Every brush seems to pick up a new color. Oh, great question. Might I do a plein air Wednesday demo with the warmer weather coming? You read my mind. In fact, I am going away with one of my paint groups this weekend, and we're going to be doing just that. And we're hoping for good weather. If not, I'll be painting indoors. But I won't be able to take you along with me because they're a rowdy bunch, and I'd never get a word in edgewise. Creating some really nice transitional color here. And while these look like they're really colorful, by the time we get the darks surrounding it, it will pull together quite nicely, I think. I'm not using too much yellow because I'm not looking to really introduce a lot of orange or green into this. My blue is cerulean blue hue. For those that might not be aware, a hue is not necessarily inferior. It might be a substitute because something is difficult to find or too expensive. It might be the original is rather toxic, so they wanted to come up with something safer. So these are all good reasons for using something like a hue as opposed to an original color. Sorry, trying to multitask here, not doing very well with it. Okay, so I'm almost all the petals at this point. Still have a couple that I need to do, and it pretty much is a one petal at a time kind of thing. They're separate petals, you have to keep them separate, so that's just how we roll. Rinse, get that blended in. I'm going to tuck a little yellow in this one just because it's so close to the center. Might even do that on this one. Put a little yellow towards the middle where it makes sense, right? There's going to be a little reflected light coming from that brilliantly colored stamen in the middle. Okay, I guess I can do this one. Gets a lot lighter on this side. Got a little color, but it's lighter on the other side. Yeah, using color rather than a gray, mixing a gray, is infinitely more beautiful in a painting, especially if you've got delicate whites that you need to deal with. I think it makes a world of difference. I am rinsing between some of the color changes so that I don't create a green by going from my yellow directly into my blue. So yeah, I am rinsing between some of these color changes. Obviously, I'm not mixing all three colors at the same time. That would be very muddy looking if I mix all three. They can mingle, but I don't mix them over here on my palette, and I'm not mixing them on the paper either. Okay, so this little fold over here, this needs a little something. Okay, so some really nice colors. I don't think anybody's going to interpret this as a multicolored flower. I think when you get all of the other colors in the painting, people do understand that this is a white flower, but colors reflect on white. Colors reflect pretty well on black too, but especially on white. Okay, I want to make sure this is dry, and I'm going to go on to my reflection here. Should be enough. And when I do this reflection, I'm mostly going to be connecting it more as one whole image, like one whole thing, rather than doing separate petals all the time. It's fairly dark up in here, so I need a darker value for sure. I may introduce a bit of, I think I'll use some neutral tint. I'm going to use a little neutral tint, but I also want to keep the colors consistent with what I've already used. So I'm still using the cerulean and the permanent rose and the aureolin, but it's going to make a difference having the Payne's Gray in. It's going to make things darker. Or sorry, I said Payne's Gray. I meant to say neutral tint. I like neutral tint. It's a nice, gentle gray, I find. It's a softer gray. These obviously get lighter towards the end, but not white. Take a look at your photograph and you can see that these, this reflection is significantly darker. Even the lightest part of it is significantly darker than the white of the paper I've left up here. I want to put down color that's wet enough that it will connect. All the colors will connect. Keep that all connected there. Really paying attention to the shape of the petals in front. And I would suggest that if you want to give this a go, don't work too tiny. Like, these subtleties are a lot harder to achieve in a really tiny spot than they are on something bigger. Be brave. Go bigger. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Plenty of wet color. Besides being darker, I'm really wanting to reduce the amount of detail in this reflected area, or in the water surface area, so that there's no kind of confusion between the actual plant and the reflection, but the idea is there. A little more neutral tint. See, this is still wet. I'm working quite loosely here, and now I know that this is going to dry lighter because I'm working pretty wet here, and I know it's going to dry lighter, so I'm not hesitating to drop in a little extra color because I know it's going to, by the time that dries, it's going to be significantly lighter. These are the things you figure out about watercolor, but only through practice and trial and error. Nope, some of this is starting to dry, so I have to come back in and make sure this is re-wet this. Otherwise, it will end up with hard lines in there. And now I kind of did it on purpose so that you could see what I need to do, or what you need to do if that happens, because it happens all the time. Re-wetting an entire section will prevent those hard lines. It's when wet color meets dry color. That's where the hard lines start. So the solution, wet it all. Just like that. Just wet it all. And I think I've got enough in there now. Wow, that looks dark. It looks dark. It's crazy how dark that looks, but it will dry lighter. And as I put my even darker background in, that is going to give the right impression. But against that white paper, boy, is it deceiving. I'm going to test my theory. Hopefully I'm not too far off. It happens. Oh, Mina, thank you. I must have known, right? So I can see a couple of spots. I could maybe even add a little bit of that neutral tint into some of these shadows up here, because as nice and gentle as this is, it does need a couple of darks. There's a couple of really significant shadows in here. So just letting that cool down a moment. So let's say here, for example, this petal right here. If I re-wet this, now obviously if you are painting in your own convenience and your own time, you can be a little bit more particular than I'm being here, but I want to just show you that I can bring some of those darks in there. I wet it first. Just going to soften it a little bit. Paper was kind of hot, so it kind of dried too quick, but there, I can re-wet that, and wow, you can really see that petal now. So there's going to be a couple of other places where I can pop that out and really make that petal stand up. Now I have a feeling that I may just finish up this Waterlily here and do the background, finish the background and the lily pads next week, just because it I don't want to race through it and mess it up. You know, it's kind of looking nice, and I don't want to jump the gun and spoil it at this stage. But just a couple of stronger shadows, wow, can make a huge difference. I'm going to tuck right into that little point there. I'm wetting this first. Take a little of that neutral tint right in that little corner there. I'm not changing the fact that that petal has color. I'm just finding a couple of spots, not all of them, just a couple of spots where I could put a little extra. And those little hits of dark sometimes just create the volume that you need. Like this one here doesn't look right yet. So we need to get that shadow tucked up right under that petal. We need to get that stronger. It tells the story of, you know, how this one's really tucked underneath something else, that this one's making more of a shadow on it. So I need to come in and build my shadows a little bit further in some of these places. And as I make that shadow, I really have to be careful that I am maintaining the shape of the petal above. I have a little pink in there. I like that pink. Let's take a blotted brush and just help that along a bit. And you can see how it has to be done very thoughtfully. It's not just a, oh, I'm going to redo all my shadows. No, don't do them all. Just pick a few and understand that those ones need to be darker, and then touch in a little bit of extra color there. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Sometimes it's just that much, tiny bit, right? So sometimes less is more. And so I'm going to zoom out. Let's take a look at what we've got so far. I love the palette. It's very soft and gentle. I'm feeling that. I can't wait to get some of these darks in here. But before we go, I wanted to show you how I test to see whether or not I'm getting these values correct. So you've seen it. Some of you have seen this before. But if I take a couple of recycled pieces of paper or cardboard or whatever, this looks like it's extra dark, but I'm going to do this and this, and I'm pretty close. In fact, I am lighter, believe it or not, I am lighter. So, which in a watercolor is fine. If it's a little bit lighter, as long as every color is consistently lighter. Let's check these. I got the value pretty good there. So far, so good. And so I'm comparing the value more than the color, but I'm comparing the value to my reference picture, and that will really help me to figure things out. So next week, let's talk about how I'm going to do this water effect, add in all the little wormholes, any of the little veining in the lily pads and that sort of thing. I may or may not need to do more to my actual water lily. It might be okay as is, but I won't really know that until I get the darks in. So please come back next week. We're going to work on the rest of the water here, and I think this is going to be a nice painting. So hope you'll join me. Don't forget, you can always subscribe. If you don't want to miss my Wednesday, if you need a reminder, you can hit that bell icon, and that will let you know when I go live. Brazen Hearted is saying there are times when you drop a little something extra, and I find myself just nodding in agreement as it makes the shapes more evident in just the right way. Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you very much for that. Let me see here. Did I miss any? I'm just scrolling back quickly. I don't want to miss any of your questions or comments. What do I do with all my tutorial paintings? I actually just got asked this the other day, and they're in a pile over there. Some under my desk too. I guess I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do with them all yet. I think what I might end up doing is having a special sale, especially for you guys. But I'm going to have a discounted sale on demo paintings, basically. So I hope you like that, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you for joining me once again, and stay tuned for part 2, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye.